Good morning and welcome to the latest and first in a while AutoTalk Live. And I've just realised we aren't broadcasting on X today because I decided I didn't feel like giving Elon money anymore. Nothing against Elon. I just didn't feel like spending money on X anymore. Don't get started in the comments. Anything that think it's nothing ideological. It's just it's a recession.
I like how you couched it with that to start with. Like, don't put it in the comments. I know.
Yeah, I don't
You
know.
could have
I
said
don't know.
nothing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, look, I've been on the road. Obviously, I was in Europe last week looking at some plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and today I'm in Melbourne for the 100th anniversary of Ford in Australia. I think it's actually slightly older in New Zealand. Colonial Motor Company, I think, landed there in New Zealand before Ford landed here officially. And so it's 100 years here, but it's still really interesting because obviously so much of New Zealand's history has been driven out of Australia. Some amazing historical models were all developed here, built here. Stuff that was developed here was built in New Zealand, etc., etc. But just as importantly, we're here today also to see the new Ranger Super Duty, which is, I think, going to be incredibly popular, certainly here, maybe less so in New Zealand, but I think every accountant and their hairdresser will have one in some parts of the world. Um, so yeah, big beefed up Ranger that can tow 4.5 tons. They've been very secretive about it, and I've got the press kit now sitting in front of me on embargo, so I can't mention what is in it. But they've deliberately sent us the file for the photos, but not the photos
Oh,
until the time comes out. So I can't tell you anything yet, other than that there's some pretty cool stuff on it. Yes.
I
I
don't
don't have a
trust you to
hairdresser.
wave the brochure. Casually
Can't,
in front of you, say, "I'm just reading this."
I'm
Big
just
news
having
in
a
the
quick
truck.
look now.
Big news in the truck sector, though, and we were just talking about this offline a second ago. I guess one of the talking points would be, what's the powertrain going to be?
Yeah, yeah. And also this is one of those vehicles too that's going to need we still need the minister, who I now have an interview booked with, but not for some time, to change the very old and archaic vehicle weight rules. David, go.
Yeah, well, let's get it done. We've been asking for this for years. I think I first asked for it as an official. Certainly, I asked for it in my time in the MIA, and if I understand the MIA at the moment, they're asking for it again, along with every other person, because I think it will make sense.
Yes.
The difficulty is just getting all of the references and the other rules attached and making it all legally tight. It's quite a job, but it shouldn't put us off. I think it's needed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, let's face it, when those rules were first in existence, airbags weren't really a thing. Um, so there's a lot of safety weight that's gone into modern vehicles, a lot of weight to deal with emissions, a lot of weight for just comfort features. And it's not really fit for purpose anymore.
It,
Um,
it, it came up a lot during the consultation on the Clean Car Standard and the Clean Car discount, but
mm,
certainly on the standard, because the more batteries you put in a vehicle, the higher the tier weight becomes and the average weight goes up. And as you start to electrify the light commercial fleet, hey presto, it's not going to take much before it gets into the heavy, and that does not make sense.
well, prime example is the Ford Ranger PHEV. If you put 3.5 ton behind that, you can basically have me in it and nothing else. And that's if you opt for not having a spare tire, which is an option on that. The spare tire is a no-cost option because otherwise it adds to the weight numbers.
Do you see
Yeah, it's
political opposition from the likes of the Greens and our good friends and other departments of the left? So going back to the whole illegitimate ute owners, these big utes, this move towards bigger vehicles. This
There's
is all running counterintuitive to the narrative. Do you see pushback on that?
Well, none of them stepped up to complain when we upped the limit of what you could drive on a license when it comes to electric trucks. That's the reality. If they want some of these people to transition to electrification, this is what needs to happen. So I just think it's just there's had so we've had so much change over the last few years, so much on the work program that's been quite aggressive, and then aggressively run back. That there's only so much that the capability within some of these things to keep
Yep.
stuff on the worksheet.
In my
Simeon
experience,
certainly didn't have the time to do it because he was ripping up all the work the previous government had done.
yeah. Look, certainly during my time with the Motor Industry Association and the discussions that we had, because it was raised by the members of the association back in 2015 and 2016. The biggest opposition I found during that time was with officials and not so much with ministers. I don't know what Amy's finding now, and I don't know if the used car guys are talking about it, Vera are talking about it. I don't know what officials' views are now, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're still a little bit head in the sand over this one.
Mm-hmm. I'm just texting someone to see if they can give me an answer on what the current minister's position is in it. So yeah,
Sorry, what the current?
what Chris Bishop's take is on upping the GVM. I know someone I know had a meeting with him recently, and I know the topic came up. I've just texted them to see if I can share what the positioning was. So we'll see if that comes on comes back during the live stream. So yeah, we will see. But yes, no, it's been an interesting week or two for me traveling. An interesting week, I know, for you guys back there. So yeah, and then the industry's kind of just ticking over. Your little caravan trip was okay, David?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, we went to Foxton Beach for a couple of days and then up to the mouth of the Turakina River for a couple of days. That was particularly good because we were out of cell phone range, so that made for a peaceful couple of days.
Mm. And Graham, you're the yard's ticking over.
Well, as I was saying, it's been a funny month. March was just not what anybody expected, and you've heard me say this before. We started out with a hiss and a roar. March actually looked really good. We were seeing a lift through February. We saw the first part of March. We were talking about it actually on our last show. I think we did. There's definitely been an uptick in people coming across the front door, on email inquiries, on phone calls, and just a general sentiment amongst everyone we talked to, all our service providers, saying that the month had started out really well. And then I think it was 3 weeks in to the start of the third week. It's just like somebody put a knife, like hot knife through butter, and said that was then, this is now, and everything changed. And it's been, in my opinion, for a lot of the industry, it's been a really, really alarmingly quiet second half of the month, and I don't know why. I'm racking my brains. Is it because it's the end of the financial year is normally not a bad time to be transacting? For some people, it doesn't suit, but for a lot, it does. There's these cars coming through, a shortage of vehicles. It's just died from a retail perspective. It's died. Dave,
I have a pet theory on this one. I wonder, and it is a wondering as opposed to a certainty around this comment, if this talk around tariffs and the global impact and what that might do to the various economies, and whether people said, "Oh, let's just tighten our belts for a little bit more until this all settles down."
I would agree 100%. I was going to say that you could track it almost to the day when that conversation started ramping up in the media to when people started backing off. Because don't forget, I mean, we talked about that economic sentiment. Ironically, in New Zealand has been improving. We've had a lot more small little good news stories coming out about how our economy is starting to turn the corner. There's a bit of improvement. We're seeing some upticks on things. But at the same time, we saw just this cavalcade of news coming down at us about what's going on in the States. And I think it has pushed pause on people's decisions to go out there and actually shop, certainly in terms of big retail ticket. Now, the rider on this is I've heard there are some businesses out there in the sector that are doing really well. We've heard from a couple of people that we know that are saying, no, it's great. We're famously good times. So it's not everybody. But I think as an overall, it's been very, very quiet indeed, and worryingly quiet. Let's see if it improves
It's
into
it's
April.
it's it's interesting with the tariffs because it sounds to me like the reality of what will have happened to New Zealand on them is, as far as the overall economy goes, is actually going to potentially end up positive. Some of our input costs into the market could be cheaper simply because of companies will be looking for path of least resistance to where to send their products. So we could see some stuff actually come down a bit. But yeah, we're going to have this little time while people work out what's going on. You know, I mean, people often seem to think American news is world news, and we need to remember that it isn't always the case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just going to say that. I'm just trying to remember the professor of economics name who put out the model yesterday, looking at the various impacts that suggest that we could have a slight lift, even if there are retaliatory tariffs by other countries. But in terms of New Zealand, the impact of New Zealand, I think this is going to be quite small in the negative, if it is, and it's more likely to be positive. So I think I'm hopeful that things will start to pick up again. But I do have the suspicion that people have said, oh, we don't know what's going to happen. Therefore, let's just hold off a bit. But I likewise, Graham, I was talking to a couple of dealers here in the Hutt Valley, and there are quite a few. And they just said, yeah, it's gone quiet. And they wondered whether the discussion around the tariffs, many people were just holding while they see what happens.
Yeah. Yes. We're also
And
seeing,
for
I
the
think,
automotive sector, okay, Richard, sorry, off you go.
I'm also hearing some interesting things from the finance market. We know that buy rates aren't exactly the lowest at the moment. And Graham will avoid naming names here, but people will know what I'm talking about. I think maybe there's one company that has lowered their buy rates, but their barrier to actually get lending across the line has raised dramatically. And I think that's causing a little bit of a warp in some sectors of the market as well. That's becoming a little bit of a minefield to get through. I'm not sure who heard the same thing, but yeah,
Yep.
a little bit of an interesting one floating around there. Check your buy rates, people. Remember that a cheap buy rate isn't necessarily a good thing if you can't actually lend the money to anyone. So
I think there's also some concern, again, this is just between us all, in other words, the wider audience. I'm concerned a wee bit that the finance market is once again it's segregating into the players that are doing things above the line, irrespective of rates and your percentage loadings. As it were, if you're putting products into your loans, whether it comes to GAP or LPI bits and pieces, and the percentage loadings you can use. And I just sense that there's a part of the market that is just saying, you know what, to hell with that, try and catch me. And we're seeing some reasonably concerning stories out there about the loadings going on. And yes, of course, finance is just such a huge part of your dealership and how a lot of your profits derived. But I sense that there's some that are now pushing that bar a bit too far when it comes to what is fair and reasonable. And they're playing a game which says, until you catch me, I'll go down that particular pathway. And that's concerning, I think, for the industry as a whole too. I don't mean to say we should be out there like policemen, but sometimes, the industry's got to keep an eye out for itself and make sure that it's not going too far down one particular pathway, because it reflects upon all of us. And I have that sense that there are certain sectors that are indeed walking down that particular road.
yes. Right, now let's get on to the news. And we are now nearly 15 minutes into what was supposed to be a short episode. So let's keep that in mind as we blast through these. We'll start with some good news. I feel like some good news. And that is the Bioscore Awards, annual Bioscore Awards. Trust Motors wins Bioscore's annual Supreme Award for the second consecutive year. Established 5 years ago in Motion Technologies, the results for the annual Bioscore Awards have been tallied, and it congratulates the 2025 award recipients. The second consecutive year, Trust Motors is the 2025 Supreme winner as New Zealand's number one rated overall dealership. It's also the third consecutive year that Trust Motors has been named the number one rated large dealership. Yeah, pretty cool awards there. God, there's bloody Dave Boot. Who would ever think he's a good dealer?
Where did he get his photo with me?
Anyway, you can go to the latest AutoTalk magazine to see the full listings.
Which includes a West Auckland dealership that I believe might be the name of Croydon's, perhaps, that big number 2 in terms of medium, and in the top 20 overall nationwide. Just saying, not a plug.
Yes. Ford New Zealand announces 2024 award-winning dealers. They've announced their dealers. The winners of the 2024 Ford President's Awards were Andrew Collier, Fairview Motors, Richard Burns, Avonsley Ford, Paul McKendry Ford, Nathan Abernathy of Regional Ford, and Mark Quirk of Whanganui Motors, depending on however you want to pronounce it. A nice list of dealers there, obviously done really well. And you'll notice that there's no dealership that we've talked about a few times in the past on that list, Graham. Again, people who've been
I'm
long-term
going to
viewers will
say,
understand exactly what I'm saying there.
there's the in-joke on that one. But if you notice, more to the point, with the exception of the Avon guys in Christchurch, all regional dealers. Once again, the regional guys, I think when it comes to customer service in New Zealand, they knock it out of the park. They really do. Hats off to you. If you're a regional dealership, new or used, you guys, you understand the meaning of customer service and retention, I think, far better than your city ilk. There's a few lessons to be learned there for all of us.
Now, Mr. LinkedIn user in the comments, you'll have to explain to us what you mean by Dave for Pope. I need some elaboration on that. Trade Me listing cap for April. Trade Me is giving dealers a significant boost this April by removing the cap on dealer vehicle listings for the entire month. Dubbed Unlimited April, the initiative allows dealers to list an unlimited number of vehicles without any extra charges beyond their existing vehicle limits. Some dealers initially questioned if the announcement was an April Fool's joke due to the generous terms, but it was actually announced on the 31st, not the 1st, and Trade Me confirmed it is real. Trade Me Sales Marketing Insights Director Jamie Fuller explained the rationale behind the promotion. We know the market's still tough. We're giving dealers a month of free listings above their existing vehicle limit to help out make sure all of their cars get seen and drive more leads. Trade Me is the digital forecourt for dealers, and we want every buyer to see every car a dealer has for sale. Have you guys gone and popped up all your stock while this is going, Graham?
I'm sorry, I was stuck in my throat. So my take on this is they are, hats off, they are seeking to understand how much stock there actually is in the marketplace. If you're looking to say, okay, so these caps put in place were not universally liked by the trade, would be an understatement. And this is a fishing expedition to see how much stock is actually out there on forecourts for sale that is not currently being put through the platform. In other words, what's the competition putting through that we're not seeing?
I had wondered whether it was a response to increased competition. That's certainly one way to try and see what there might be out there. I mean, if I was in their shoes, I'd probably be doing the same thing. I mean, it's a fairly astute business move. So, and good on them.
I actually, and again, I'll get accused of being a shill here. I recently have seen some, I think, positive moves from Trade Me, and yes, I'm sure they're from a very much a business-focused perspective, but they seem to be moving back from, they're moving back into, I think, more of their old format of actually trying to engage, I think, with the market a bit more, perhaps than over the last couple of years, and we're seeing them come out of their shell a little bit, and a change, I think, in positivity there. So I'm going to take this as positive. For now, and we'll see how things go over the next little bit.
Well, I think you're right. Don't knock it on the head for what it is. I think my impression is it is actually what I've just talked about. I don't think they're necessarily just going out there with a little bunny for Easter saying here's a freebie. But I think you're right. I think Trade Me is certainly making some steps to re-engage with the dealer community. And I think last year they walked it too far. And it was understood at the time it was possibly a case of just bad timing with the competition that was imminent. At a time when the industry was facing an unprecedented squeeze. Because don't forget, things last year, mid-year, happened really quickly, or we just didn't notice it. And that happened at the same time as Trade Me unveiled this new improved package that was seen for being really just a price increase by any other name. So the timing was perhaps poor. And I think there have been some really good steps taken by Trade Me to try and walk some of that back and re-engage with the industry, right or wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a huge part of Trade Me's revenue, so why wouldn't they try and re-engage? All kudos to them. But the competition out there has increased, and it's increased in part because there were dealers that walked away from Trade Me, or at least devolved some of their platforms to the competition, but also because the competition was there and it's got a bit better. And so it's been a good, I think, approach from Trade Me to try and re-engage back with its core community, I suppose, and understand better what its members need. And this is part of it, is understanding what stock needs actually out there amongst its clientele. And then maybe from there could be better serving of its needs.
I think this is an interesting one for dealers too, and that they need to actually don't just take this as an opportunity just to check everything online and go for it. I mean, obviously put it online, but it's one of those rare cases where everyone, at least everyone on the same package as you, is going to have everything out there. So you're going to get a bit more of an honest answer of how your marketing's working for you. So do it, but monitor what it actually does to your numbers. I know Trade Me have some pretty strong data tools on there. And definitely set yourself a reminder in the calendar for the 29th of the month to sit down, go through, work out whether it's worked. And if it has, then look at what you need to do with your package. And if it hasn't, then make sure you go back under your cap, because while they're deferring billing for the next month, if you're still up next month, then you're going to have to pay for it eventually. So, actually use this as a bit of a chance for some analytics, I think, rather than just a freebie. I think would be my case in point. And for the love of God, go through and actually write your listings properly. Otherwise, don't even bother.
No. I want you all out there in dealer land. Just write shitty listings. Use your potato phone for your crappy photo taken in the shade by the groomer in the rain, and then put 2 lines about the car in capitals that's misspelt. Carry on. Knock yourselves out. Love you. Carry on.
There's an interesting addendum to this at the moment, and that's that Trade Me has confirmed talks with Stuff amid speculation over a possible deal. Obviously, it's a bit weird out there in media land at the moment. Don't I know it? But Trade Me has noted that they have been in ongoing discussions in recent months regarding content sharing and other collaborations with Trade Me. Now, there has been some reporting that potentially Trade Me has been looking at an acquisition of Stuff's digital business. But it's still all a bit up in the air there. We don't really know what's going on. Obviously, there's some failed talks between NZME and Stuff over NZME buying Stuff's newspapers. Now we have Stuff, Trade Me potentially looking at Stuff, but they're not saying what. So, yeah, interesting stuff floating around there. I did have an answer from my industry colleague in regards to the minister and vehicle weight issues. So it sounds like there is definitely a willingness there from Chris Bishop to work on this, though it sounds like potentially it could be vehicle-specific exemptions to start and then moving to an act change, because that would take a lot more time than I think some people are willing to wait. So the suggestion is we could see some vehicle-specific exemptions coming next year.
Yeah, I might have to do some homework on this. Actually, that's just triggered a thought, a memory more than a thought. I was thinking an act change, isn't it just all rules? It actually might be prescribed in primary legislation. I can't recall, to be honest.
My sources require it requires a change of the land rent of the act.
The act, well, yeah, okay. But they can do that and then do the rules. It is, as I indicated, a complicated process. Well, it's not complicated. It's just that the current limits are so enshrined in so many bits of secondary legislation. But you're right, you've got to change the primary legislation to empower the secondary legislation to be changed.
Just do what Doge does just do what Doge does and do Control F and then Control R or Control Delete. That works totally well for them.
It's like Homer Simpson at the control desk at the nuclear power station, isn't it? Sometimes just pressing everything.
But But the risk is you end up like on the Tariff one, where there's some poor old island in the Antarctic that's been hit with a 10% tariff and it's got zero population on it. So
Because they let
Norfolk,
AI make the
Norfolk
list.
Island. Norfolk Island.
They
They
let-
got the dependency of Australia. Like, I don't. We don't want to go down this path, but I will say this: it just that the whole announcement yesterday with the little ports felt like about 11 o'clock at night. Someone gave Mr. Trump a big white sheet of paper and the box of crayons, and he went through his phone, looked at all the countries in the world, and said, "You're nasty. You're not so nasty. I don't know where you are, so you must be nasty. I never heard of you, so you must be nasty." And then 12 hours later, we had a chalkboard. Irrespective of whether you approve or you disapprove of the process that's underway at the moment, it did have that little feel of somebody really hadn't either done their homework or nobody in the Oval Office wants to say no to President Trump.
Well,
so
Mr. Putin didn't get any new tariffs, apparently.
no, I
He
just
was
looked it
he
up.
wasn't on the board.
McDonald Islands. Have a look and see what McDonald Islands in the Antarctica is.
Yeah. I think Heard Island got something as well, didn't they? But yeah, it's a weird one. And Vietnam apparently has really pissed Trump off for some reason. So
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's surprising.
yeah, I know. Oh well. Right, let's move on and try and
Back
knock
to
out like 8
stories.
stories in 6. Turner's Invercargill branch moves to a new and bigger site. That is a very big, spacious yard, but then I'm guessing land is not expensive in Invercargill. Turner's Auto Retail has completed the relocation of its Invercargill branch to a bigger and better site. The new branch location is 65 North Road, Prestonville, Invercargill, and it opened for business on April 1, 2025. It has a bigger team and offers a full suite of services such as buying and selling vehicles, on-site finance, and insurance. Our current Invercargill branch has been a great success, and this move will allow us to build on that momentum. Turner's Auto Retail Chief Executive Greg Hedgepeth says. Turner's has successfully established branches across regions of New Zealand, including recent expansions in Nelson and Timaru. I'm thinking of a Croydon's Invercargill branch, Graham.
I love you guys at Invercargill. I really do. Like, you've got a great transport museum, and I believe the oysters in season are really good too. And that's all I'll say.
Right. Market statistics are out. Registrations of new passenger vehicles increased by 11.4% to 8,426 units in March, up from 7,561 in the previous corresponding period. Toyota led the way, up 8%, followed by Kia and Mitsubishi. Honda actually had a pretty good month, up 75% to 555, with Mazda and Suzuki, Ford, and Hyundai there as well. RAV4 was the most popular car, followed by ASX and Outlander. So, yeah, pretty okay there for best cars. I know 11% sounds great, but it's not working off a massive base exactly.
And
And
those
then,
three models, aren't they rental primary? So RAV4, ASX, and Outlander, aren't
yeah,
they primary rental vehicle
you
market?
can tell it's a rental month when that Ford Everest gets in the top 10. Nothing against the Ford Everest, but a relatively niche vehicle that when rentals are big, the Everest has a good month. We don't get the rental figures until a couple of days after we get the stats, so we can't always tell.
Right.
Import passenger cars down by 18.6% to 7,279, registrations from 8,943 the year before. Total led the market, but was down 22%. The only two brands to grow in the top 10 were BMW and Mercedes-Benz. Nissan came in second. Toyota Aqua was the top selling car. Interesting to see the CHR has been creeping its way up the ranks a little bit. That must be getting close to its time in the market to shine. Because that would be
Yeah.
going on 8 years old in the Japanese market, I think, that car.
Getting on
Yeah.
for it,
There's
yeah.
also restrictions around going into Australia as well. So that's had a bit of a play on what's available. So the CHR is one of those vehicles that's been on again, off again going into Australia, which is one of our competing markets. And it was a really successful model for Toyota Japan. But I also noticed that on some of our stock provider platforms that we use, looking at the comment that perhaps the CHR value values may see a bit of a drop away in New Zealand. This appears to be the average selling time for them is now starting to be pushed out, which tells you the market's probably saturated. And as those selling windows increase, so the prices may start to decrease as well, and which the prices in Japan haven't really come down that I can see at all. They've stayed stubbornly high. They're a very expensive SUV by comparison to some of their competitors. But I
A
think they're
very
getting
good
a little
car.
bit.
Very good car.
Yeah, they are. They are, and they appeal to a lot of different sectors. But the data would tell us that their time to sell, their days on the yard, is increasing reasonably dramatically. So the demand from a retail perspective from consumers may be tailing off a little bit.
Sorry, the demand in New Zealand or in Japan?
The demand in New Zealand. So the stock is increasing without doubt. There's lots of CHRs coming through to be purchased, but the time on the yard for those models is increasing as well. So we may have reached saturation levels.
And no one take this as any indication that Graham is just wanting them all for himself and just suggesting that so you guys don't buy them.
We don't buy CHRs.
Oh, don't you? Okay, fair
No,
enough.
no, we don't. Just one of those models we don't generally do. And the little reason as to why, it's, we're here in the industry, is there's just not from our perception, when there's not a profitable item in terms of margin. So you've got to pay absolutely top dollar to get good ones in Japan, unless you buy shit. So if you buy good ones, there's no such thing as a good, cheap CHR. You get it here, but their market is to an extent capped in what you can ask for them. And so they just compress too much at the top level to make them a profitable item.
Yeah. Right, now we have another new brand. This one, well, people may be thinking, oh, that's a bit boring. It's actually pretty cool. Geely, the Farazon commercial vehicle brand, has landed in New Zealand. They sell the Supervan. And if anyone wants to jump on the EVs and Beyond YouTube channel and check out my walk around of the most recent Everything Electric show, you will be able to see that there. It is a very cool van. So, built by the Geely Group. It has no B pillow, which is weird for on the roadside, which is interesting. But it gives you a huge big opening, and it means that potentially you can do stuff like having a one-seat van with extra load space in the front that's still accessible from the side door. Electric, obviously, big 83 kilowatt and 106 kilowatt batteries. Yeah, there you go. You can see in that picture there the interesting load opening that you've got the option of there.
It reminds me of the old
Um,
CA, and David will know, without alluding to your age, the old CA Bedford van with the side sliding doors on the right-hand side, and the door would roll the right way back, and so you had everything from the driver's compartment back into the side of the van available for doing your parcels and bits and pieces. Remember those?
my dad had one, and if I was a good boy, we got to go drive around with the side doors open.
I mean, as the vehicles went, they were shit, but they sold pretty well in that sort of, British 60s and 70s commercial vehicle market with the sliding door. So there we are. They've taken the cue from the Bedford CA van.
So it's being distributed by the JW Group out of they're based out of Wiri. They've actually been here a while selling other brands of trucks. Yeah, interesting to see those come along. They are a very cool van. I think the only that comes close to those vans from my inspection would perhaps be the new generation Ford Transit Customs. But yeah, they are one of those Chinese products which kind of jumps the queue on when everyone else is doing it a little bit. And I've been quite impressed. Importers urged to review their classifications. Oh God, I pushed the wrong button. Hang on. There we go. New Zealand vehicle importers are being urged to double check their vehicle classifications following significant changes to the Clean Car Standard that came into effect on January 1. The Imported Motor Vehicle Industry Association, VIA, has issued a reminder to ensure vehicles are accurately classified under the CCS, warning that misclassification, particularly between passenger and commercial categories, could result in avoidable financial penalties. Classification matters. Accurate information under the CCS can significantly affect your financial exposure, the association says. Now, this is quite a detailed thing. I would suggest you go read the story at AutoTalk or over on the VIA website. Not something we can really get the exact things right in this stream for. But the key thing, of course, particularly when you're looking at, I believe, things around the fact that different vehicles have different weights, and that affects the calculation on CCS. Don't screw it up. Conversely, don't
Mm.
try and do it wrong to get a better rating, because you'll get caught out on that as well.
Yeah.
No doubt someone will. But yeah, just
I mean,
go and check that.
there has always been some low-level confusion about what is a passenger vehicle versus what is a commercial vehicle under the land transport rules by some of the dealers, and particularly the used car dealers more so than the new car. And that's why this sort of has appeared as a reminder by VEA, which I think is a timely reminder. But the commercial vehicles get a more favourable rate. And so if you inadvertently
Yes.
or more conveniently classify your vehicle as a light commercial as opposed to a passenger vehicle, then yes, you are going to get caught out, and the penalty is quite significant. It's getting more significant, as you know, Graham, isn't it?
It is. There's another point to
Especially,
this that I think is worth raising, is that it highlights the need to actually monitor your stock going through compliance. So don't forget, this is making the assumption that you monitor, or that you have a sort of a hand in every vehicle that you put through for compliance, because the ratings for these are at a compliance level where you don't necessarily have sort of front of hand control. I think if you're in the commercial van sector, or you're importing commercial vehicles or semi-commercial vehicles, it highlights the need to actually have a better path of communication with your compliance workshop, and to have an understanding of that prior to the point where the MR2A is issued and it's almost too late, or a lot harder to sort of go through the re-rating process. Because for a lot of dealers, the vehicles go straight from wharf to compliance, and the first thing you know about it is when if you're lucky, if you're calculating or looking at your CCS account when it comes to acceptance, or looking at your debits. For a lot of dealers, that's as far as they go. They don't look any further as to what the individual units are accumulating. So it highlights the need to really careful watch, not just post-compliance, but pre-compliance, and having that relationship with your compliance provider.
mm-hmm.
Well,
Right, moving on to
we used to see. Well, I used to see in the new vehicle stats in my time with the MIA. Well, I think probably everybody could see it. A number of new vehicles that needed to be reclassified each year. They would come in and they were certified, and then within a month they were redone because they were actually certified originally or complied under the wrong classification. And so when you count vehicles, then a vehicle can only be registered once for the first time, and suddenly they appear as being registered twice for the first time. That blows your stats out. Well, it used to get up to about 600 vehicles a year, and I think that's coming all the way down. And I'd argue that one of the reasons it's coming all the way down is that getting it wrong now has some financial implications.
Because there was a big cutout for light commercials this year. I mean, the way we took the foot off the gas in regards to particularly parts of the market that account for ute this year, quite dramatic. So yeah, there's potentially some windows there for that. Now we'll just touch on this briefly. Trump slaps 25% tariff on imported vehicles into the US. This is outside of the other items. This one is causing some massive, massive issues in America. And I watched an interesting video from the Wall Street Journal yesterday where a company basically dismantled an F-150 and laid it out in a room, pointing out how difficult it is to calculate, right down to the fact that you have to account for the price of the components in the transmission. And then on top of that, you've got to account for the... Someone's beeping.
Yeah, it's me. Sorry, I didn't unplug my phone.
That's okay. And then you've got to account for the source of the steel and aluminium within those components within the transmission. So imagine you've got a transmission that was assembled in Canada from components made in Mexico, made of metals mined in Canada. And it becomes quite elaborate. And Trump's been standing up there going, I've given them a month, a month off that one to work out how to do it.
Fundamentally, I mean, you again, we're not going to sort of cover the top. One of the most telling comments, I think, about a lack of understanding, and I can say this because I should point out I'm an American car owner with a vehicle made in America, so I can say this, and you can't jump on me. Trump saying it's unfair because they don't buy our cars in Europe. The Europeans, they don't take our cars. They don't take, you know why? Because they're shit. And it's got nothing to do with supply. Think back to the Japanese disdain for, I mean, they've tried to sell American vehicles in Japan as well. The Americans do really well with certain market sectors, i.e. the big trucks, the F-150 series, the Rams, the Chevy Silverados. They do well with muscle cars, as we know. They're two sectors they do really well with. But in a vehicle marketplace, for everyday vehicle, what are Americans buying with hand over fist for time immemorial? And they haven't bought them because they're cheaper. Because a Honda Accord back in the day when it was a market leader, or the Toyota Camry, wasn't cheaper than the domestic product. It was actually more expensive. It sold because it was better. And I think the great failing of America, and particularly Trump in this regard, is he just fails to understand why people buy vehicles. And it's not just about price. And the Europeans don't buy American cars, not because they're not available, because they're just not as good compared to their domestic product. I'm really sorry, but that's the reality of it. And it's not going to change.
And it also demonstrates a fairly significant lack of understanding on how the modern vehicle manufacturing process works in terms of design and sourcing materials and parts. There's no automotive manufacturer that makes all of their own parts. Most of the parts are outsourced, and therein lies the difficulty in being able to calculate which tariff applies to which bit of which component. And trying to get that sorted in a month, I don't think they'll have it sorted within a year.
Yeah. I'm just doing some stuff here at the moment. So
Just
the
calculating a coach on
your
minibar.
your Ford Mustang is, yes, built in Michigan, but the 5-liter V8 is built in Windsor, Ontario.
Yeah. And I love it to bits, but it is what it is, and it's every single rental vehicle, and you've been with me, Richard, on these journeys too. Every single rental vehicle we've had with all these different American vehicles, I think right back to my experiences living in America in the 90s, is the domestic product's never been quite as good. And quite as good. Well, if you're a car buyer, you want to maximize your dollar power to get the best possible car that you can. And again, I come back to the point. Why did Americans buy the Toyota Camry year after as the best-selling car in America as opposed to the domestic products? It wasn't because they were cheaper, because they weren't. I just think there's...
The interesting thing coming out of this is that the highest American content cars in America are the Hyundais and the Kias. And they're going to be the two of the brands that really win from these tariffs, not Ford, General Motors. Stellantis are apparently just in big trouble because very little of what they make is actually out in America, even their final assembly is. So yeah,
that's interesting, Richard, because I would have thought that with Hyundai and Kia, a number of their components are outsourced and made in other countries. And you only have to think back to COVID times to have a look at the disruption to vehicle manufacturing because China closed down all of its plants. And it affected every manufacturer around the world. So again, it's no simple task.
No, exactly.
What about Tesla?
Yeah, Teslas do have a very high American content, but people are a bit, kind of iffy on that at the moment.
I've got a Cybertruck I can sell you. Do a really good deal.
Fell off the back of the truck, did it, Graham?
Some of the higher American content cars are the Teslas, the Honda Passport, the Volkswagens. You're all good.
Unplug
You're
my phone.
all good. Yeah, and then you've got the interesting element in that beyond Mexico and China, both Lincoln, so Ford and General Motors both sell volume models in America now that are made in China. So maybe not for long. Maybe not for long. Though there was the argument that there was still some questioning around when they put this on as to whether uh, when you took those tariffs, it was just going to be on cars 25%. But it turns out I believe it's not, and it is actually those other tariffs then stacked with 25%. Because if it had just been the auto tariff at a blanket 25%, China and various other places would have been winning because they can build cars way more than 25% cheaper than America can. And it would have pretty much zero sum, if not a benefit to them as to what was there. But yeah, we'll see. Hey, look, I'm in. I believe that America should better protect their market. But again, it's like so many things that we talk about, including this legislation we've had come into New Zealand, is that um, good legislation done or good administration or good theory, but done badly is worse than you know. It's just not smart. So what they're doing necessarily isn't bad, but they're doing it extraordinarily poorly. Uh,
Mm,
so
mm.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, last thing to the day and bit of an ad for us is AutoTalk Live. We are 1 month and 4 days away from AutoTalk Live. We only have a handful of tables left. And we are in a bigger venue with more tables this year. So that shows the demand for this. I highly encourage everyone to get along to autotalk.co.nz/live and grab yourself a ticket or a table, either for you and your team, or even group together with some other dealers and grab a table. Or if you really can't afford it, then jump on the phone to your finance insurance company, some of your key suppliers, and say, hey, take us to AutoTalk Live, because a lot of those guys have bought tables and are bringing dealers along. They're required to. If you buy a table, you've got to have at least 6 of the 8 being dealers. So there's probably some seats available with some of your key suppliers. So that's a hot tip for you to save some cash. But if not, investing in your business and education is good to do in a time like this. We have pretty much a full roster of speakers now. So Deloitte's coming along to present their industry benchmarks. That is pretty important. Nick Tuffley, the ASB Bank chief economist, he is a very intelligent but also quite witty guy. He's coming along to give us an economic update and tell us when we will be able to stay alive. We've got Mark Rainsford coming down. He's a industry expert out of China who's coming down to discuss what's coming from China and what to be aware of there. That's going to be interesting. Jamie Fuller, who we mentioned earlier from TradeMe, is actually coming along to let dealers delve a bit into their huge, extensive back catalogue of data to discuss buyer trends. Then we have Siddharth Machurla from FOYI. That's going to be a really interesting one. They're a consultancy that works on basically money leakage. Work out where you're missing money going into the company and money's leaking out the other side as well. You can hopefully make yourself more profitable without even changing a huge amount of buying and selling and blah, blah, blah. Nathan Cargo from AdTalk Hedge, Angela Jorgensen from CFS Finance, Amos Banbury from Better Finance, Bill Haynes from Juno and Jupiter, and John Shands and Richard James from TF Group. And I've got to thank them because they are behind Clip Assist and Duracell, and they are the major sponsors of AutoTalk Live this year, including we're going to have a car on stand getting rectified during the show. So that'll be interesting to go and have a look there. They've got some interesting products. You can add a wee bit of profit to your business. The day itself this year runs from 11 o'clock, so you can go to the yard, get some paperwork done, and then head in for a few sessions, some lunch, and then run through the afternoon. We found that worked really well in Christchurch, having the shorter day, but we're still packing in
Yeah.
pretty much as much stuff. So yes, highly recommend getting in there before it sells out. And just again, thanks to Clip Assist and Duracell with our sponsors AutoSure, AutoHub, CFS, FOYI, Auto IT, Provident Insurance, and importantly, UDC on the morning and afternoon tea, and Better Finance sponsoring the drinks at the end. We are at the Tote at Ellerslie Racecourse this year, so a bit easier on the parking, but also a pretty good place to get an Uber or catch a train out of if you do want to have a beverage or three. So there you go, autotalk.co.nz/live. Graham, you'll be there. Dave, I'll throw you a ticket if you want to come up. And yeah.
I would have been tempted to say yes, but sometime in the next few weeks, the roof on my house is getting replaced. and then I've got some other bits and pieces. So the next few weeks,
Oh, excuse me.
actually the next 4 or 5 weeks is going to be rather interesting because it's all weather dependent.
Yes, yes. Excellent.
Can I just
Well,
say
look,
that
thanks.
as a dealer, if you're thinking about coming, or not thinking about coming along, and I'm not saying this as I'm part of the civil group we're talking about here, I'll be there, of course, Richard, but if you're a dealer, and if things are a little bit tuggy at the moment, and you do watch our show every now and then, you think, what are these guys rabbiting on about? You know what? You could attend the day, you could go listen to just 2 sessions, and if you get 2 really good ideas or make you think about how your business could operate better, and I'd argue and say, within the first 2 sessions you've talked about there, Richard, if you haven't got some better ideas to take back and make you sit and ponder at your office at night, and you didn't have your ears stitched on, these are invaluable insights into our trade, talking to people that know our industry and that know some of the things that you may not have thought of, or just allow you to think differently. It's invaluable. If you take away 2 things from it, it's worth every cent of the ticket, or leaning upon your service provider for a ticket. You really should be thinking about attending.
They are really informative days, things like this, and I agree, they're well worth attending if you can make it.
Yeah. We do have the live stream again this year. We didn't have one last year, but we do have the live stream available this year, and we have got the technical issues sorted we've had in the past. So that's an option as well. But get there if you can. The networking is just excellent. There is no other opportunity in the market like this to get in front of some pretty key people, and also it's amazing what you can learn from your fellow dealers as well. So yeah, do get along. Anyway, thanks for that. Thanks everyone for joining us. This short one's blown out to 50 odd minutes as usual. And yeah, we will catch everyone next week, hopefully, for
Yep.
AutoTalk, for the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap.